I was halfway down the 94 when I heard the chime. I just finished a double shift on a Friday, back-to-back trauma calls, one cardiac arrest, and a rescue that had me rappelling down a canyon because someone thought hiking alone at dusk was a solid idea. I was running on fumes, halfway caffeinated and 3 minutes past the point of caring what the city traffic threw at me. That's when my phone buzzed, a dull vibration against the dash-mounted tablet. It was from the family finance app Olivia and I used, synced to our shared credit card. The kind of notification you don't usually pay attention to. Grocery run, gas refill, maybe a food delivery when she was too wiped to cook. But this one had a different tone. New receipt synced. Bellevue Hotel by the Bay. $387.00. Transaction time, 11:47 p.m. Cardholder, Olivia Hart. At first, I figured it had to be a mistake. Maybe she got charged for something she didn't book. Or maybe someone had stolen her card. My thumb hovered over the transaction detail, waiting for the obvious explanation to appear. But it didn't. It was real. Paid. No fraud flag. Room service included. I drove the rest of the way home in silence. No music, no radio chatter. Just the buzz of the wheels on the freeway and a slow-building throb behind my temples. I didn't want to make assumptions, I really didn't. Olivia's been working herself ragged at the school, juggling lesson planning with some new committee she'd volunteered for. A charity auction or scholarship thing. Maybe the hotel suite was part of that. A temporary venue, storage space for donated items, something she just didn't get a chance to explain. That's what I told myself. But the closer I got to home, the more the logic unraveled. Olivia was methodical. She hated wasting money. Booking a suite at one of the most expensive waterfront hotels in San Diego for a meeting at nearly midnight didn't add up. I pulled into the driveway just before midnight. The porch light was on, and I could see her silhouette through the front window. Sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open, her phone propped up beside it. Looked like she was reviewing spreadsheets or maybe messaging with someone. I stood there in the car a minute longer, trying to remind myself to be calm. To not come in like an interrogator. When I finally stepped inside, she greeted me with that practiced warmth. The same kind she used on frazzled parents at parent-teacher nights. She came over, kissed me quick on the cheek, and said, "You look exhausted. Long day?" I nodded, dropped my gear bag by the door. One of those shifts. She offered to heat up dinner, some kind of quinoa bowl concoction she'd prepped earlier, but I told her I wasn't hungry. Truth was, my stomach was in knots. Instead, I wandered over to the laundry room to toss my uniform in the hamper, and that's when I noticed it. Her gym bag, slouched against the wall like it had been dropped in a hurry. Nothing weird there, but when I bent down to move it out of the way, I saw it. A plastic tag hanging from the zipper pull. Bellevue Hotel, room 14C. I froze. It wasn't just a receipt now. It was physical, tangible. A stupid plastic tag that practically screamed. She was there, and it hadn't even been removed. Like she hadn't thought anyone would notice. My heart was pounding. I tried to keep my face neutral as I walked back out. She was still at the kitchen table, now sipping tea and watching something on her tablet. I grabbed her jacket from the hook near the door, intending to hang it in the closet, just for something to do with my hands, and that's when I smelled it. Cologne. Not mine. It was faint but distinct, crisp, masculine, like bergamot and cedarwood. Not something Olivia would ever wear. Not something she'd bring home from a classroom full of kids, either. I held the jacket a second too long. Long enough for her to notice. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just tired." She gave a little nod, but her eyes flicked from me to the jacket, then back again. Barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I didn't say anything at first. Just walked over, sat down across from her at the table. I watched the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she kept glancing back at the screen like she was hoping to redirect the conversation. Then I said, "Did you stay at the Bellevue last night?" Her fingers stopped moving. For a half second, her expression didn't change. Then, cool as anything, she looked up and smiled. "Oh, yeah, I meant to tell you. The committee used a suite there last night to prep for the charity gala. We needed a bigger space. The school conference room is under renovation. Remember? I didn't remember hearing that. She continued, smoothly, like she was reading from a script. We had a bunch of donated items to sort through, and the event coordinator booked the suite for us to use as a temporary holding room. It was late by the time we finished, so I just crashed there instead of driving home exhausted. She paused, waiting for a reaction. I didn't give her one. Is that what the notification was about? She asked. The card sync. I nodded slowly. Yeah, just caught me off guard. She smiled again, this time a little more forced. I should have said something. Sorry. I was so wiped. I didn't even think. The silence hung between us for a few seconds too long. I studied her face. Olivia was a good liar. Not because she was dramatic, but because she knew how to sprinkle in just enough detail to make it sound reasonable. A school event. A last-minute change. An overworked teacher crashing at the venue. Could all be true. But then why the cologne? Why the room tag still attached to her bag? And why did the entire story feel rehearsed? I didn't realize you were working that late, I said casually, sipping my water. She shrugged. It wasn't planned. We just lost track of time. You know how those meetings go. I nodded, pretending to agree, but my mind was spinning, because now I was replaying things I hadn't noticed before. Little things. A few weeks back, she'd changed her phone password, said it was because of some school policy, needing to keep student data secure. Made sense at the time. Then she turned off our shared location on her phone, which she chalked up to battery saving. She started taking longer showers, started locking the bathroom door when she got texts. Last Saturday, she said she was going to a fitness boot camp with her friend Janine. But Janine posted beach photos from Santa Monica that day. Different time zone. I didn't say any of this out loud. Not yet. Instead, I stood up from the table and gave her a faint smile. I'm gonna shower. Try to sleep before my early shift. Okay, she said brightly. You deserve rest. But as I walked down the hallway, I couldn't help but wonder if she could lie so smoothly about a hotel suite. What else had she lied about? They say your gut knows before your mind is ready to admit it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Olivia's soft breathing beside me like white noise. My eyes adjusted to the dark, but my thoughts never settled. I wasn't angry, not yet. More like unmoored. Like I had stepped into a version of my life that looked familiar on the outside but felt entirely off beneath the surface. The Bellevue suite could have been a one-off. A weird, expensive school decision. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like the final piece clicking into place after weeks of strange, disconnected moments that suddenly made perfect sense. Like the night she came home wearing a deep green dress I hadn't seen before. She claimed it was for a school fundraiser. Black tie optional, she said, laughing like it was a joke. But she didn't post any pictures. None of her teacher friends tagged her in anything. When I asked how the event went, she was vague. Said it was nice and changed the subject. She used to wear the silver pendant I gave her when we got engaged. A simple charm with our initials engraved on it. Never took it off. Lately, though, it's been missing from her neck more often than not. I noticed it once in the bathroom drawer next to her contact case. The next morning, it was gone. She'd also stopped using her car's Bluetooth to take calls. I only realized that because she used to complain about the audio being fuzzy. Now, when I called, it rang 3 times and went to voicemail. If she did answer, her voice was short, like she was reading from a mental script. In a meeting, babe, I'll call later. And she never did. We used to share everything. Schedules, passwords, dumb memes throughout the day. Now her location sharing was disabled. By accident, she claimed. Her text alerts were turned off too. I once saw a message flash briefly across her screen before she tilted it away. I didn't see the name, but I caught the heart emoji in the preview. I told myself I was being paranoid, that people change habits, that stress does weird things. But then I found the receipts. It happened by accident. She left her tote bag on the couch, and her wallet was halfway out. I went to slide it back in, and a bundle of paper caught my eye. Taxi stubs. 4 of them. All heading to the same downtown address. 214 South Matson Lofts. Not school. Not the gym. Not even the Bellevue. A loft. That name stuck in my head like a splinter. Matson Lofts. Luxury condos near the harbor. I looked it up later that night under the covers, phone brightness down to minimum. Each unit was sleek, private, modern. Rent started at $3,500. Not the kind of place you casually drop into. The next day, I asked where she'd gone last Saturday when she said she was with coworkers. "Oh, we were just bouncing around venues for the school gala," she said, without looking up from her salad. "Downtown mostly." "You remember the names of any?" I asked. She paused. "There was one. I think it was called the Maple Room." I nodded slowly. The Maple Room was across town in Little Italy. Nowhere near Matson Lofts. I didn't press her. I just kept watching. She started locking the bedroom door during Zoom calls. Said she didn't want students walking in on private meetings, even though she was teaching from school again. When I'd walk by the door, I'd hear her laughing. Once, I knocked to ask if she wanted coffee, and the room went dead silent before she called back, "In 5, babe." But it was the gym story that really broke me. She said she joined a new weekend boot camp, some cardio boxing class out in Chula Vista. Said it was liberating and hard to explain. I wanted to be supportive. I asked if I could come watch sometime, not to interfere, just to cheer her on. She froze. Actually froze. It's not like a spectator thing," she said. "Super intense. Kinda private. Just me time, you know?" The next weekend, I found a yoga mat and gloves in the trunk of her car, still wrapped in plastic. Tags attached. Never used. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the lies or how lazy they were getting. That night, I got bold. I texted Janine, her best friend. I kept it casual. "Hey Janine. Just curious. Did Olivia end up calling you the other night? She said you guys were talking super late." There was a pause. Then, "Janine, huh? No, I haven't spoken to Liv since Tuesday. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Yeah, all good. Just mixed up the days. No worries. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she kissed me like always and said she'd be home late again. More school prep. I watched her walk out the door wearing a blouse that was way too dressy for a Saturday. I didn't say a word, but I made a note. Something had shifted in me. I'd gone from suspicion to surveillance. Not because I wanted to trap her. I just wanted to understand what was happening to my life. Our life. The one we were supposed to be building together. This wasn't about one night at a hotel anymore. It was a pattern. A string of lies so carelessly stacked that I had to wonder how long she thought she could keep this up. Or worse, if she even cared if I noticed. And the hardest part? I still wanted to believe her. I still wanted her to say something that would pull it all back together. I kept waiting for the slip-up to be innocent. For the taxi stubs to belong to someone else. For the cologne to be from a teacher she hugged goodbye. For the late nights to really be lesson planning. But deep down, I knew. You don't lie that often, that easily, unless you've done it before. Unless you've practiced. She had become a stranger wearing the face of the woman I loved. And I was the only one still pretending nothing had changed. It's one thing to suspect someone is lying to you. It's another to catch them in the lie, to have it preserved in digital time, playing out frame by frame while your heart breaks quietly in the background. It started with the doorbell cam. Not mine, my neighbor's. Tyler, the guy 2 doors down. He's a retired Navy tech and installed cameras that could probably track a lunar landing. A few weeks ago, I mentioned something about neighborhood break-ins, and he casually offered to let me review old footage if I ever needed it. I took him up on it. I didn't give him the full story. Just said Olivia thought someone had followed her home one night, and I wanted to double-check the street footage. He said sure. Pulled it up right there in his garage, like he was queuing up a game replay. I didn't expect to see anything. I told myself I was just being paranoid again. But there she was. Timestamp. 11:52 p.m. Saturday. Olivia standing outside our building. Not in school clothes. Not in gym gear. in a tight black dress I'd never seen before. Her hair done, makeup perfect. The kind of effort you don't make for lesson planning. Standing next to her was a man. Tall, clean-cut, gray suit jacket, hand on her lower back like he owned the space. They stood there for maybe 30 seconds. Long enough for her to say something, laugh, then reach up and kiss him. Not a polite, friendly peck. Not a cheek brush. A full kiss. Familiar. Mate. When they finally broke apart, he hailed a cab. She slipped into it with him like she'd done it a dozen times before. Tyler, completely unaware of the significance of what we were watching, turned to me and said, "Guess she wasn't scared after all, huh?" I forced a tight smile. "Guess not." I thanked him and left. I barely made it into my car before I felt the air leave my lungs. That kind of betrayal doesn't knock the wind out of you all at once. It drains you slow. One realization after another. One image layered over all the lies you wanted to believe. I could have confronted her right then. Shown her the footage. Demanded answers. Watched her squirm. But something in me said no. Not yet. I wanted her to have one last chance to come clean, and if she didn't, I'd be ready. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. Our engagement dinner had been on the calendar for months. A waterfront restaurant in Coronado, private room, both families flying in, close friends invited. Olivia had handpicked the floral centerpieces and even argued with the chef over the dessert options. It was supposed to be the formal send-off before the wedding chaos began. I almost canceled it, but then I realized no. This was the moment. Let her lie to everyone. Let her perform. Let her build the facade until she couldn't hold it up anymore. Let the truth knock it all down. The day arrived like any other. Olivia was calm, radiant, seemingly guiltless. She wore a Berg *NDY satin dress, hair curled in waves, eyes glittering with charm. She floated around the dinner like a hostess, complimenting outfits, laughing with my mother, sipping white wine like she didn't have a single secret to hide. I played my part. I smiled. I held her hand. I answered questions about honeymoon destinations and joked with her dad about wedding playlist vetoes. Until dessert came. That's when it happened. Out of nowhere, Olivia clinked her glass. The room hushed, expecting a toast. She stood. And at first it sounded like gratitude. A thank you to family, to the support, to the future. But then she said it. "I know this is supposed to be a night of celebration," she said, voice steady, gaze sweeping the room. "But there's something I need to get off my chest before we move forward." I felt my throat tighten. She turned to me. "Ben, when we got together, I made a choice to walk away from someone I cared about. Someone I wasn't ready to leave. And lately, I've been questioning if that was the right decision." Silence. Actual full silence. My mother dropped her fork. Her father stiffened like a statue. Someone near the back let out a whispered, "What?" Olivia's eyes glossed over slightly, but she didn't stop. I've been lying to myself about how resolved I was, about whether I truly moved on. And I owe you the truth. I don't know if I have. It was a confession without confession. No name, no apology, no clarity. Just a cryptic half-truth delivered like a monologue from a drama she was directing. I stood up, slowly, calmly. I didn't say a word, didn't make a scene. I just placed my napkin on the table and looked at her like I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. Because I didn't. "I think you just answered your own question," I said, voice low but clear. "Thanks for letting everyone know." And I walked out, through the stunned silence, past wide eyes, through the restaurant's glass doors and into the night air. Felt cold, clean, real. Behind me, I could hear chairs scraping and voices rising. Family members confused, friends unsure whether to follow me or stay and figure out what had just happened. I didn't look back, because there was nothing worth looking at anymore. The rest of the night blurred. My phone buzzed nonstop. Olivia, my sister, Olivia's mom, mutual friends trying to clarify what just happened. I turned the phone off. I wasn't interested in hearing excuses. I'd already seen the truth. Olivia just gave everyone else a taste. The next morning, I called the venue coordinator and canceled the wedding. Terminated the contracts, forfeited the deposits. She didn't sound surprised. Later that week, one of the catering staff reached out to return our final invoice and, almost as an afterthought, added, "By the way, just so you know, Olivia came here last month with a guy, tall, dark suit, said he was her event coordinator. We thought it was odd he made so many decisions for her, but we don't ask questions." I thanked her, didn't say anything else. There wasn't much left to say. The dress was returned. The rings were boxed and stored. Her belongings were packed neatly into tubs, stacked in the corner of the living room. I didn't even have the energy to throw them out. I just wanted them out of my line of sight. Olivia never explained herself. She sent a few texts in the days that followed, long, winding messages that swung between, "I was confused," and "You misunderstood me," and "Please don't hate me," but they all felt hollow. She hadn't just cheated. She'd rehearsed it. She'd brought our families together and burned it all down in a single toast. And worst of all, she didn't look sorry. The thing about endings is they don't always announce themselves with finality. Sometimes they feel like slow unravelings, tiny fractures that build into a collapse. But in my case, the break was clean, public, unmistakable. After I walked out of the engagement dinner, everything moved fast. Olivia tried to reach out, calls, texts, voice messages that got more frantic by the hour, but I didn't answer. There was nothing to salvage, nothing to clarify. She made her statement with perfect timing, perfect posture, and not a hint of remorse. So I moved, quickly. I canceled the wedding the next morning. Venue, a photographer, a catering, decorations, the DJ, all of it gone. Some vendors were sympathetic. Others were strictly business. I didn't argue. I just wanted it done. I paid the penalties, returned the deposits I could, swallowed the rest. It wasn't worth fighting over. The ring? I placed it back in the little box it came in and slid it into my sock drawer without ceremony. That was the last time I touched it. Friends started reaching out, mostly in hushed tones. Some offered sympathy. Others didn't know what to say, or assumed I was the one who had pulled the plug without explanation. A few of Olivia's close friends stayed strangely quiet. That silence spoke louder than anything else. I packed her things in the span of one quiet afternoon. It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no shouting. Just cardboard boxes and duct tape. Her shoes, her books, her framed photos, all lined up in a neat row by the door. I texted her once. "Me, your stuff's packed. Let me know when you want to get it." She didn't reply right away. A day later, she sent one line. "Olivia, I'll come by this weekend. Please don't be here." And that was that. When she finally showed up, I wasn't home. But I could tell she'd been there. Not just from the boxes missing, but from the faint, familiar scent of her perfume still hanging in the doorway. She'd left her key on the table, resting on top of a Polaroid of us from the night we got engaged. No note, just the image of us smiling under string lights, frozen in time like two people who still believed in each other. I left that photo right where it was. Later that week, I got a call from Camila, one of the venue staffers we'd worked with. "I'm sorry if this is out of line," she said, her voice hesitant. "But I figured you'd want to know." I paused. "Know what?" She took a breath. "A few weeks ago, Olivia came by for a final walkthrough. She didn't say anything unusual, but she wasn't alone. She brought a man, tall, mid-30s maybe, real polished. Introduced him as her logistics partner. Said he was helping with the planning. My stomach dropped. She let him make the final seating decisions," Camila continued. "He knew the schedule inside and out. I thought it was weird at the time, but I guess it makes sense now." It did. Too much sense. This guy wasn't just someone she was seeing on the side. He was involved, deeply, making decisions about my wedding like it was his. I wanted to feel angry, but I didn't. Not then. I felt detached, numb. The reality of it all settled over me like fog, thick and muffling. This wasn't just betrayal. This was architecture. a blueprint of deception that had been unfolding beneath me for months. I stopped talking about her, not because I was hiding, but because I was done giving her story oxygen. When friends asked, I gave simple answers. It didn't work out. When her name came up at work, I let it pass like background noise. But people talk, especially when something dramatic happens in a close-knit city like San Diego. Word got around. Some assumed she cheated. Others said I got cold feet. Everyone had a theory. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I just let it fade. Work became a distraction, but not a healthy one. I took on extra shifts, nights, doubles. I told myself I was just keeping busy, but in reality, I was avoiding the silence, avoiding the apartment that still echoed with her absence. Caught up with me eventually. About 3 weeks in, I passed out during a call. Not dramatic, just a slow fade to black while standing in the back of the ambulance. My partner caught me before I hit the floor. I came to moments later, lying on the gurney like one of my own patients. The next day, I was placed on mandatory leave. You need rest, my supervisor told me. Not heroics. So I rested, sort of. I left the city for a while, joined a volunteer rescue unit in the Sierra Nevada. A buddy from my academy days had connections up there. It wasn't exactly relaxing, but it was grounding. Out there in the mountains, it was just raw air, pine trees, and purpose. People who needed help. No memories lingering in doorways. No wedding reminders. No Olivia. One afternoon, after a training session, I got a message from James, an old college friend who had helped me set up our joint finances. James, hey man, meant to ask, do you still want access to the shared storage unit account? I blinked. Me, storage unit? James, yeah, the one under Olivia's name. Well, technically, it's under Olivia Price. My blood chilled. That wasn't her legal name. Hart was. But Price? That was his name. I checked the email trail. Sure enough, she'd rented a unit under Olivia Price 5 months earlier. Used a different email address. Prepaid for 6 months. I drove down there 2 days later. The unit was on the other side of the city, industrial, anonymous, surrounded by chain-link fences and dusty concrete. The manager on site wasn't suspicious when I showed her the linked payment info. She came here a lot, she said, checking her clipboard. Kept it pretty minimal. Mostly files, some clothes, a few art pieces. Files, clothes, art. Like someone building a second version of their life. A quieter version. One they didn't want found. I stood there in the middle of the narrow aisle, staring at the metal door to the unit. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Just knowing it existed was enough. Knowing that she'd created a backup identity, tested the waters of a new life before she ever gave mine the courtesy of honesty. That was the moment all doubt died. There would be no reconciliation. No second chances. No long conversations where we cried and said things like, I didn't know what I wanted. She knew exactly what she wanted. She just didn't want me, and that was fine. Because now I no longer wanted her either. I thought it was over. After the cancellation, after the boxes, after the silence that stretched across weeks and miles, I assumed Olivia would vanish into whatever life she had rehearsed with him. That was the story I told myself. She got what she wanted and I got the lesson. But people don't always let go when they should. The first letter arrived on a Monday. No return address. Just my name written in blue ink, soft and almost uncertain. Inside was a handwritten note folded into fourths. She still looped her YS and dotted her IS with little circles. I recognized it instantly. Ben, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to say this somewhere that wasn't a screen. I don't expect forgiveness. I just miss you. The real you. The way you used to hold the back of my neck when I was upset. The way you folded your shirts perfectly even though you pretended not to care. The little things. I don't know how I let us fall apart. I was scared. I was selfish. I hope you're okay. Olivia. I read it once. Then again. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sat there, staring at the words like they belonged to someone I used to know in another life. Because in a way they did. I didn't respond. A week later, She left a small package on my doorstep. No knock, no call. Just a brown box wrapped with twine and a note that read, "For the memories." Inside was an old photo album she must have dug up from her parents' attic. It had ticket stubs, dried flowers, wristbands from concerts, and a Polaroid of us slow dancing in our first apartment. Our socks sliding on wood floors, her head on my shoulder. I didn't throw it away. I also didn't open it again. I placed it on the highest shelf of my closet, right next to the wedding ring I never gave back. It didn't stop there. She started showing up. First at public events, community charity runs, local food drives, things she knew I volunteered for. Always from a distance at first, then gradually closer. One afternoon, I spotted her on the sidewalk at a 5K fundraiser, holding a bottle of water like she was waiting for someone to recognize her. She waved. I didn't wave back. 2 weeks later, she walked right up to me at a food bank drive and asked how I was. As if we hadn't detonated our engagement in front of 60 people. As if she hadn't ghosted me after I packed up her entire life. "You look tired," she said gently. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "You shouldn't be here." She looked hurt, like I just slapped her with a sentence she didn't expect. "I'm just trying to be civil," she said. "This isn't civil," I told her. "It's invasive." She left quietly. But that wasn't the end. The third time, she showed up at a friend's birthday party uninvited. She hovered around the edge of the patio, making awkward small talk until someone gently asked if she'd been invited. She left before I even had to approach her, but the message was clear. She wasn't fading away. I started to feel paranoid in my own neighborhood. Every time I stepped into a coffee shop, I looked for her. Every time I heard footsteps behind me at the farmer's market, I braced myself. It was subtle, never loud, but it was constant. I finally had enough. I reached out to a few mutual acquaintances, friends we both knew and still trusted, and asked them to pass along a message. Calmly, without drama. "Please ask Olivia to stop showing up. I'm not interested in reconciliation. I'm not angry, just done. This isn't a game. I've moved on. She needs to, too." The response came through one of her former coworkers. "She cried," he told me. "Said she didn't know how to let go." I didn't respond, but I did consult an attorney. Not because I wanted to escalate things, but because I needed clarity on my rights, on restraining orders, on documentation. It felt ridiculous, surreal, to even consider legal protection against someone I once planned to marry. But that's how twisted it had become. The lawyer was understanding. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're setting a boundary. And that's not just okay, it's necessary." I didn't file anything official. I didn't want to. But I made it clear, through quiet channels, that if Olivia continued, I'd be forced to take steps. After that, she stopped. Not all at once, but slowly. She disappeared from the events. The letters stopped. No more unexpected packages. The silence returned like a warm coat. I found out later, through someone who worked at her school, that she'd started therapy. She transferred to a new district in a different part of the county. Rumors said the other guy had moved to another state for a job. Something about real estate development in Oregon. Olivia had stayed behind. Alone. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt relief. The kind that comes when you finally realize peace isn't loud. It's quiet. And once you find it, you protect it like it's sacred. My own life began to feel like mine again. I sold the apartment. It had too many echoes. I found a rental in Mission Hills. An older bungalow with chipped paint and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew through. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like a place where I could hear myself think. I stopped checking her social media. I stopped checking mutual friends' pages too. What she did, where she went, who she was becoming. None of it was my business anymore. She had crossed a line, and I had built a wall that didn't need to be rebuilt or re-examined. Some people asked me if I ever thought about forgiving her. The truth is, I didn't need to. Forgiveness implies I'm still carrying the hurt. But I wasn't. Not really. I dropped it like a stone and walked on. Olivia had chosen her path. And I had finally chosen mine.